Hey, it's David here. I thought I'd do the Authortube newbie tag, just because I've been meaning to do it and I've been too embarrassed by the state of my old camera. So I'll try and do it quickly. Last time I tried to do one of the tags, I spent over an hour answering questions, so we'll see what happens. Right, so this is the old, not 2.0, it's the 1.0. So first question is, how did you find out about Authortube? I was actually doing research to see how other authors were promoting their books, as well as how other writers just interact with YouTube. I just wanted to do some market research, and I found a series of Authortube videos about, I think it was, someone said something about, it was like 10 mistakes that newbie authors do or something, and I got onto a series of lots of different things, and then I found Kate Covanoff, sorry Kate if I'm pronouncing it wrong, and she did this bubbling, wonderful video, and I was just like, shit, I like this dude, this chick, she's so nice. And then she mentioned Authortube, and I thought, Authortube? I must investigate. And I did, and here I am. Question 2, what genres do you write in? I am irritatingly complex. The short answer is science fiction. The long answer is pretty much everything. I don't limit. I write what the muse leads me to write. Although I'd be pretty hard pressed to do pure romance or something like cowboys and Indians, but Western I think is a technical word for it, less offensive title, but generally it's science fiction, urban fantasy. Question 3, what is your preferred writing tense, point of view and category of story? I tend to write in past tense and third person. The past tense is mostly because when I was growing up, that's what all the writing books, the writing workshops and the how to write books and, all the information I was getting trying to research how to become a better writer was to write in past tense. I use third person because first person, I have trouble with verbs, with verb tenses and plural nouns, and plural pronouns, and they them is, I can't write with they them. The plural are is just, I have a learning difficulty to do with certain kinds of grammar. It doesn't work. And using I in the story, I get totally overwhelmed by the problems in my head. I can't write. There's not enough flow to write. So I do third person because it flows the best. And second person's more of a literary sort of perspective, and I'm probably never going to be a literary writer. Category of story. I generally probably target for adults, but my mum, who used to be a teacher, middle school teacher, she said that because my books currently don't have any sex in them, I pretty much have kiss, fade to black, that even with the violence, you could actually qualify it as a young adult as well as, adult and all the other ones. So, but primarily I targeted at adults just because, people are getting murdered left, right and centre, so it's probably smart to target it at an adult audience. Question 4, are you a plotter, pantser or plantser? For NaNoWriMo, I am a absolute obsessive plotter. For just normal writing, when I don't have to do it at speed, I plan and plot, and then I go with my pens, if you know what I mean. So I'll say, okay, I want this sequence of things to happen in this order, and then I'll sort of throw a character in the position and go, okay, what are you going to do? Because I'm a character-driven writer. I actually had to rewrite... I had to write Rise of Hawk to alter one particular character so that 15 years later he doesn't die, because he wants to die, and I had to give him enough things so he doesn't want to die, because I can't just, fix the character and make them do what I want. So in general, I tend to be a plotter, but I do tend to sort of let the character and the muse sort of off the leash relatively frequently, mostly because that's when the best art comes out. Question 5, sorry. Are you self-published, published, or yet to be published? I am self-published. I have 2 books, Rise of Hawk and Time Speaker, but they're both under my old name, oops, if you can read it, of Kiana Drake. I've done a second edition of Rise of Hawk under my new name of David and Drake, and I have to redo Time Speaker because the comparable quality of writing is much lower. It was my first book that I wrote, so I have to do it again, which is going to be a pain in the ass. Oh well. But I'm self-published, mostly because I spent 10 years trying to get Time Speaker published, and all the publishers went, nah, bugger off, you're not sellable. I had one person, 3 letters that basically said, your story has lots of promise, but because it's sci-fi urban fantasy, it's not sellable. So after 10 years I went, nah, screw them, and did self-publishing with a lot of help. But I'm not allergic to the idea of being published by one of the big 6, but I'm not pursuing it personally because my last submission was to Bain Publishing, and I thought they were perfect. They would have been perfect. They had the same sorts of agenda, or at least appeared to, and I waited 18 months. 18 months for like a 10-word email that said, no, go away, essentially. And it broke my heart. It was the last publisher that I could realistically submit to from New Zealand, because the New Zealand publishers weren't going to be doing science fiction or series. I don't know if they're still with that, but they weren't at the time, and Bain was the last one. And it just broke my heart. So I have no emotional connection to being published by a big 6. I intend on going forward as an indie publisher. But again, that said, if things change, I'm not completely allergic to it. Because, money, eating is good. Question 6. What publishing company, literary agent and or printing company are you represented by or use? If you're not yet published, what is your dream publishing house and or literary agent? When I was a kid, I wanted to be published by HarperCollins, because all of my favourite books as a teenager were written by them, or published by them. But they said no 3 times, so I am going to be publishing under I want to actually eventually turn it into an indie press, but under my own brand, which hopefully after time and money I can turn into an indie press and actually help other indies. It's going to be called something something Nexus something. So Nexus will be in the title, and that's all I've got really. And my symbol, that one. That one. Which is Hatinan. But yeah, all of my supposed dream publishers and literary agents were assholes, so screw them. Um, right, question 7. What Authortube related videos can we expect to find on your channel? I'm not sure. I don't want to like use Authortube to go buy my book, because that's really boring. And what I want is actually to interact with other writers and maybe learn from them, or at the very least socialize, connect. I used to be on DeviantArt before I got really, really sick, and I really loved interacting with other authors, and I'd like to do that again. I'm willing to share what I know. I mean, I have been writing for 20 years. Something like 20 years. Almost 20 years. Oh shit, no, it's more than that. Wow. 28 years. Isn't that bizarre? I have been writing for a really long time, and I know quite a few tricks, and I know quite a lot of the sort of grammar-y type rules, because I had to learn them manually. So I'd like to share some of my knowledge if I can, and any indie publishing knowledge that I have that's still relevant after almost 10 years. Well, 7 years. What I mostly want to do is just interact with other authors. I want to socialize and connect with people. I want to maybe show off my process, share what I know, learn from others, just socialize. My channel won't just be an Authortube. I'm going to have an Authortube section for Authortube, and then I'm going to have one for my the Time Speaker universe, my writing, and probably a third group for social justice related sort of videos, if I make the decision to be brave enough, because it's not fun talking about social justice on YouTube or on the internet at all. Right, next question. When did you start writing? I've already said that. I was 11, 12. Although I started telling myself stories when I was very young. So kind of 4 years old. What was the first story you ever wrote? It was a horror story. It was 4 short stories. I think total it was about 3,000 words. And it's actually quite interesting. Age of 12, I wrote this story, and it was from the perspective of some kids on a school trip to a historical hotel in Transylvania. But the kids weren't the good guys. The vampire that was slowly systematically killing each of them and dumping them down a well was the good guy, because he's the only one who survived the story, or all 4 stories. So I definitely have always had a unique perspective on things. What writers have inspired you writing the most? What authors? Quite a lot. My first name that comes out of my brain is Anne McCaffrey. 3 of her books are pretty much responsible for me going from writing horror to writing science fiction. The Rowan, The Ship Who Sang, and To Ride Pegasus. And if you read To Ride Pegasus and The Rowan, you'll see where there are quite a few of my psychic sort of memes that come from Anne McCaffrey, or at least slightly borrowed in general shape. Probably even my dragons eventually too. Cheryl Jordan was another writer. She's a New Zealand writer. Actually, it's one of her books. And a few old DeviantArt friends. Gosh, I can't pull their names out of my head. My friend who used to write under the name Peter Dawes, who's Connor Peterson, I think, now. My wonderful artist-writer friend Heather Watson, and Denise Mayer. She was pretty awesome too. I probably wouldn't have written Rise of Hawk without them. And my series of 12 books would only be a 3-book, a trilogy, without them. Question 11. Do you schedule your writing sessions or simply get writing whenever you find the time? Depends what I'm writing. I've got a relatively busy week. And I also loan my computer to a friend for 2 days as well on the weekdays. So I actually schedule the weekend as my writing days. If I'm doing like an actual book, if I'm in the middle of a book, writing a book, I need at least a day to build up my brain space and all the information and get the muse on the right sort of track, and then hit the second day running. And when I'm in that, I need 2 completely free days to do book writing. And if I can get into the zone, I can do anywhere up to 16,000 words in a weekend. But if I'm doing like chapbooks or novellas under 20k, I can just do them in the gaps. Or just have a notebook with me, which I've done before. So a bit of both. Scheduling and just whenever the brain goes, hey, what about this idea? I always have paper and pen on me, just in case the muse goes, hey, here's a random moment, you're waiting in line to go to the toilet or whatever. Here's an idea, write it down now or you'll forget it. I used to have that happen at work a lot. And it's really hard to write down notes when you're sitting on a supermarket checkout trying to process, customers. Beep, beep. Ooh, I've got an idea. Right. Oh, sorry, beep. It doesn't work. Right, last question. 12. Do you type on a computer, typewriter, write everything out by hand, or use a blend of those? And where do you write in general? For me, it depends on the stage of writing. I often start on pen and paper. It depends on what I'm plotting. Like, I've written the first 6 books. I haven't published all of them, but I've written the first 6 books. But book 7, Battle at Kane, is going to be freaking huge. Like, ginormous. 300 to 400,000 words. It's going to be huge. And I've got these 2 big whiteboards in my bedroom that I plot on, and it's not enough space for all of the stuff. So I actually do plotting for big things on Evernote, because I can just have multiple windows and fiddle and just keep adding to it as I go. When I'm writing a book, depends on how hard the plotting is. If I already know the story, I just use YWriter and Office or Liber and just write, fiddle and move and stuff. I used to write them in books as well, notebooks. It's one of my Trinidad and Chaos Gate ones. It's a 5 subject or 4 subject. Yeah. But it really depends on the book. Generally, I actually literally write here. I've got my keyboard and my computer behind the camera. So, here is where I write. I used to be able to write wherever. I've got a tablet, so that if I get an idea, I can just write on the tablet. I used to also carry my laptop around. I think I wrote about 1/3 of Rise of Hawk in the bus station in Hamilton, which was pretty cool. The muse is a little bit more twitchy these days. Can't just write wherever, digitally anyway. I don't actually know how to end these sorts of questions, but it's 20 minutes, so it's not that bad. Hopefully that's relatively interesting for people. Hopefully I'll be able to do more tags. the 2.0 newbie tag is it requires a little bit more homework, so I'll have to do that homework before I can do the video. Anyway, I hope everyone's going to have a good day. Ara ni tasa.